Welcome to this gentle exploration of one of the most profound mysteries our universe has ever whispered to us. Tonight, we drift into the strange and beautiful realm where reality itself becomes something far more mysterious than we ever dared imagine. In the quiet depths of the quantum world, particles dance to rules that seem to mock our everyday understanding of existence. Picture, if you will, a single electron floating in the darkness of space. According to the solid, reliable physics we learned in school, this tiny particle should be somewhere specific, moving in some definite direction, carrying a precise amount of energy. Yet quantum mechanics tells us something almost impossibly beautiful. Until the moment we choose to look, that electron exists not in one state, but in a ghostly superposition of all possible states simultaneously. This is not poetry masquerading as science, but the most precisely tested theory in the history of human knowledge. Every smartphone in your pocket, every laser that reads a barcode, every GPS satellite orbiting overhead depends utterly on the strange truth that particles live multiple lives at once, collapsing into a single reality only when observed. There is something almost musical about this quantum dance of possibilities. Imagine the electron as a cosmic symphony, playing every possible note at once in perfect harmony, until the moment a listener arrives and suddenly hears only a single pure tone. The other notes don't simply disappear. They were real. They existed. They contributed to the magnificent chord of potential that filled the universe just moments before. But this raises a question that has haunted physicists for nearly a century. What happens to all those other possibilities when reality chooses just one? Where do the unobserved melodies go when the symphony collapses into a single note? This question, floating like starlight through the minds of scientists, would eventually lead to one of the most extraordinary ideas ever conceived about the nature of existence itself. As we settle into this contemplation, consider that every photon of light that has ever touched your retina, every quantum interaction that has ever occurred in the neural pathways of your brain has faced this same mysterious moment of collapse from infinite possibility to singular reality. You are, quite literally, made of quantum mysteries, and tonight we'll explore the possibility that you might be living not just one life, but every possible life that the quantum laws allow. The universe, it seems, has been keeping the most beautiful secret of all, hidden in its smallest places, waiting for curious minds brave enough to listen to its quantum whispers and imagine what they might truly mean. In the early years of the 20th century, scientists discovered something that would forever change our understanding of reality's most fundamental nature. They found that light itself, the very essence of illumination that bathes our world in visibility, behaves in ways that seem to defy common sense and dance on the edge of impossibility. The famous double-slit experiment begins with elegant simplicity. Imagine a wall with two narrow openings, like doorways standing side by side. When we shine a beam of light toward this barrier, something extraordinary happens. Instead of simply passing through one slit or the other, as we might expect particles to do, the light creates an interference pattern on the far wall, alternating bands of brightness and darkness that can only emerge when waves overlap and interact with themselves. This suggests that somehow, impossibly, each photon of light passes through both slits simultaneously. interfering with itself to create the pattern we observe. It's as if reality itself is playing a cosmic game of being in two places at once, defying our most basic assumptions about how things should behave in the universe. Yet this is only the beginning of the mystery. When scientists decided to peek behind the curtain and determine which slit each photon actually uses, something even more mysterious occurred. The moment they installed detectors to watch the photon's journey, the interference pattern vanished completely. The photons began behaving like ordinary particles, each one definitely passing through one slit or the other, but never both. There is something profoundly calming about contemplating this dance between observation and reality. The universe seems to exist in a state of infinite potential until the moment consciousness decides to pay attention. It's as if reality is playing an eternal game of quantum hide and seek, maintaining every possibility in perfect suspension until someone chooses to look. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this phenomenon is what it suggests about the nature of existence itself. If photons can exist in multiple states simultaneously, traveling all possible paths through space until observation selects just one, what does this mean for the larger reality we inhabit? What happens to all those other paths that existed in the quantum realm of potential? As we drift deeper into this mystery, consider that your eyes, at this very moment, are detecting photons that have just completed their own version of this cosmic dance. Each particle of light that allows you to perceive these words has navigated the quantum realm of possibilities, somehow existing in multiple states before collapsing into the singular path that ends at your retina. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the universe, countless other photons are performing this same mysterious dance, existing in superposition, holding all possibilities within themselves, like cosmic libraries containing every story that could ever be told. The light that bathes the universe is not just illumination, it's a constant demonstration that reality itself might be far stranger, far more multiple than we ever dared dream. And in this realization, we begin to glimpse the revolutionary idea that would soon emerge. Perhaps nothing ever truly disappears from the quantum realm. Perhaps every possibility, every potential path, every alternative reality continues to exist somewhere in the magnificent multiplicity of existence itself. In the quiet corridors of Princeton University in 1957, a young graduate student named Hugh Everett III was wrestling with a problem that had been troubling physicists for decades. The quantum mechanical equations were perfectly clear in their mathematics, but utterly mysterious in their meaning. They described a universe where particles existed in multiple states simultaneously, yet somehow our everyday experience revealed only single, definite outcomes. There is something almost musical about the moment when a revolutionary idea first whispers itself into existence. Everett, working late into the evening hours, surrounded by blackboards covered in equations that seemed to dance between possibility and reality, began to entertain a thought that most of his colleagues would have considered impossible, even absurd. What if, he wondered, the quantum equations were telling us the literal truth about reality? What if, when we measure a quantum system and observe it collapsing into a single state, it doesn't actually collapse at all? What if every possible outcome of every quantum measurement actually occurs? but in separate, parallel branches of reality that split away from each other at the moment of observation. Picture, if you will, the universe as an ever-branching tree, where each quantum measurement causes reality to divide like tributaries flowing from a great cosmic river. In one branch, the electron spins clockwise. In another, it spins counterclockwise. In one world, the photon passes through the left slit. In another reality, it travels through the right. Both outcomes are equally real, equally valid, equally inhabited by conscious observers who each believe they live in the single, true reality. Everett's revolutionary insight was both beautiful and terrifying in its implications. If he was correct, then every possible quantum outcome that could occur actually does occur. Every decision you might make, every path your life could take, every random event that might unfold, all of these possibilities branch off into their own complete, fully realized universes, each containing their own version of you, living out a slightly different story. The young physicist presented his idea with quiet confidence, but the response from the established physics community was lukewarm at best. His advisor, John Wheeler, was supportive but cautious. Niels Bohr, the grand old man of quantum theory, was skeptical. Many dismissed the idea as untestable speculation, too wild to be taken seriously by serious scientists. Yet there is something profoundly calming about Everett's vision when we truly contemplate its implications in a universe of infinite branching possibilities. Every version of yourself that could exist does exist. Every life you might have lived, every choice you could have made, every dream that might have come true, all of these alternatives play out in the vast multiplicity of parallel realities. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of Everett's theory is how it transforms our understanding of loss and missed opportunities. In the many worlds interpretation, nothing is ever truly lost. Every path not taken in this reality is taken in another. Every word left unspoken here is spoken there. Every love that might have been, every song that might have been written, every moment of joy that might have blossomed, all exist in the infinite garden of parallel worlds. As we drift deeper into this contemplation, imagine the countless versions of yourself that might be having their own quiet moments of reflection right now in universes just slightly different from this one. Some might be reading these very words in slightly different languages. Others might be gazing up at stars, arranged in subtly different patterns. And still others might be discovering entirely different truths about the nature of reality itself. Everett's impossible dream has become one of the most discussed interpretations of quantum mechanics, a testament to the power of imagination to glimpse truths that lie hidden in the mathematical heart of the universe. As we settle into the deeper contemplation of Everett's revolutionary vision, it becomes essential to understand the elegant mathematical foundations that support this most extraordinary of scientific theories. The many worlds interpretation doesn't emerge from philosophical speculation alone, but from the rigorous application of quantum mechanical principles taken to their logical conclusion. In the quiet depths of quantum mathematics, three fundamental concepts dance together to create the possibility of infinite realities. The first is superposition, the principle that quantum systems can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observation forces them into a single configuration. Think of it as nature's way of maintaining every option at once, like a cosmic jukebox playing every song in its library in perfect quantum harmony. The second pillar is the mysterious phenomenon known as the collapse of the wave function. In the traditional interpretation of quantum mechanics, when we observe a quantum system, its wave function, the mathematical description of all possible states, suddenly and instantaneously collapses into just one outcome. It's as if the universe's infinite symphony suddenly goes quiet, except for a single, pure note. Yet this collapse has always troubled physicists because nothing in the fundamental equations of quantum mechanics actually describes how or why it should occur. The mathematics suggests that superposition should continue indefinitely, with all possibilities remaining equally real and valid. This is where Everett's radical reinterpretation enters the picture, like starlight breaking through cosmic darkness. There is something almost musical about the elegance of the many worlds solution. Instead of assuming that wave functions collapse, Everett proposed that they continue evolving exactly as the equations predict. Every possible outcome of every quantum measurement occurs, but each outcome exists in its own separate branch of reality. The wave function doesn't collapse. It simply spreads across an ever-expanding multiplicity of parallel worlds. This means that the fundamental equation of quantum mechanics, the Schrödinger equation, describes not just the evolution of quantum states within our single universe, but the branching structure of reality itself. Every quantum interaction becomes a moment of cosmic mitosis, where one world becomes two, then four, then countless thousands, each carrying forward a different thread in the vast tapestry of possibility. Picture, if you will, the universe as an infinite library where every book that could ever be written exists somewhere on the shelves. In the many worlds interpretation, quantum mechanics is the cosmic librarian that ensures every story gets told, every possibility gets explored, every potential reality gets its moment to exist in full, vivid detail. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this mathematical foundation is how it preserves the perfect symmetry of quantum mechanics while solving its most perplexing paradox. Instead of forcing nature to choose just one outcome from many possibilities, the theory allows all outcomes to coexist in their own complete, self-consistent realities. As we drift deeper into this mystery, consider that the very neurons firing in your brain as you contemplate these ideas are quantum mechanical systems themselves. Every thought you think, every connection that sparks between brain cells, every moment of consciousness that emerges from the electrochemical dance within your skull, all of these processes involve quantum interactions that, according to Everett's theory, are constantly branching into parallel versions. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, countless other versions of yourself are having their own variations of this very contemplation, each one exploring slightly different aspects of what it might mean to live not just one life, but every possible life that the laws of quantum mechanics allow. And in this realization, we begin to glimpse the true scope of Everett's impossible dream, a cosmos where every story gets told, every possibility becomes real, and every version of you that could exist does exist, each one a unique and precious thread in the infinite tapestry of reality itself. In the gentle twilight of scientific contemplation, few thought experiments have captured the imagination quite like Erwin Schrödinger's famous feline paradox, created in 1935 as a critique of quantum mechanics' strange implications. This elegant puzzle would eventually become one of the most powerful arguments in favor of Everett's many worlds interpretation. Picture, if you will, a cat sealed within a steel chamber, accompanied by a Geiger counter, a hammer, a flask of poison, and a single radioactive atom that has exactly a 50% chance of decaying within an hour. If the atom decays, the Geiger counter detects it, triggers the hammer to break the flask, and the poison kills the cat. If the atom doesn't decay, the cat remains peacefully alive. According to the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics, until we open the box to observe the outcome, the radioactive atom exists in a superposition of both decayed and undecayed states. But this creates a deeply troubling paradox. If the atom is both decayed and not decayed, then the cat must somehow be both alive and dead simultaneously. A conclusion that seems to violate everything we understand about the nature of life and death. Schrödinger intended this thought experiment to highlight the absurdity of applying quantum superposition to macroscopic objects. He believed it demonstrated that quantum mechanics, as then interpreted, led to ridiculous conclusions when extended beyond the microscopic realm. Yet there is something almost musical about how his critique would eventually become a beautiful illustration of reality's true nature. In the many worlds interpretation, Schrödinger's paradox dissolves like morning mist touched by sunlight. The cat is never both alive and dead in the same universe. Instead, at the moment when the quantum measurement occurs, when the atom either decays or doesn't, the universe itself branches into two complete, separate realities. In one world, the atom decays, the poison is released, and the cat dies. In the parallel universe, the atom remains stable, and the cat continues its peaceful existence. Both outcomes are equally real, equally valid, and equally inhabited by conscious observers. The version of you that opens the box in one universe finds a living cat and experiences relief. The version of you in the parallel universe discovers the tragic outcome and feels sorrow. Neither version is more real than the other. They are both complete, self-consistent realities that have branched apart at the quantum moment of decision. There is something profoundly calming about this resolution. In the many worlds interpretation, Schrödinger's cat doesn't suffer the impossible fate of being trapped between life and death. Instead, it gets to live its full, happy life in one universe while simultaneously exploring the alternative outcome in another. Every possible cat gets its complete story, and every version of the scientist gets to experience their own authentic reality. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this interpretation is how it transforms our understanding of quantum measurement itself. Instead of forcing nature to make cruel choices, deciding which possibilities live and which must die, the universe preserves every outcome in its own perfect, complete world. The superposition doesn't collapse, it simply spreads across the infinite garden of parallel realities. As we drift deeper into this contemplation, consider that you yourself are constantly undergoing your own version of Schrödinger's experiment. Every quantum interaction in your brain, every random event that shapes your thoughts and decisions, every moment where probability branches into multiple possibilities. All of these create their own quiet divisions in the fabric of reality. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse. Infinite versions of Schrodinger's cat are living out every possible variation of their story. Some cats are peacefully napping in boxes that were never opened. Others are playing with quantum physicists who decided to become veterinarians instead. And still others are exploring realities where the fundamental laws of physics unfold in subtly different ways. And in this infinite multiplicity, we begin to glimpse a profound truth in a universe of endless branching possibilities. Every story gets its chance to be told. Every life gets its opportunity to be lived, and every version of reality gets its moment to exist in all its complex, beautiful, and sometimes paradoxical glory. In the quiet halls of academia, where revolutionary ideas often germinate in the space between one brilliant mind and another, the many worlds interpretation began to evolve through the contributions of other visionary physicists who saw beauty in Everett's impossible dream. Among these giants, John Archibald Wheeler and Bryce DeWitt would help transform a young graduate student's radical idea into a sophisticated mathematical framework for understanding the very structure of reality itself. Wheeler, Everett's doctoral advisor, was himself a poet of physics, a man who gave us the term black hole, and who saw the universe as a vast network of information and geometry dancing together in cosmic harmony. Though initially cautious about his students' revolutionary interpretation, Wheeler recognized the mathematical elegance that lay hidden within what many dismissed as philosophical speculation. There is something almost musical about the way Wheeler approached the problem. He understood that the many worlds interpretation wasn't merely a new way of thinking about quantum mechanics. It was a fundamental reimagining of the nature of reality itself. Under his gentle guidance, the theory began to mature from a bold hypothesis into a rigorous mathematical framework that could make testable predictions about the quantum world. But it was Bryce DeWitt who would provide the mathematical muscle that transformed Everett's vision into something that could stand alongside the most sophisticated theories in physics. In the late 1960s, DeWitt developed what would become known as the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a mathematical description of how the wave function of the entire universe evolves through time. Picture, if you will, an equation that doesn't describe just a single particle or even a complex system, but the totality of everything that exists. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation treats the entire cosmos as a single quantum mechanical system, one that exists in superposition across all possible configurations of space, time, matter, and energy. It's a mathematical poem written in the language of differential equations, describing how reality itself branches and flows through the infinite space of possibility. In this cosmic equation, every possible universe, every arrangement of particles, every possible history, every alternative timeline where different choices were made, exists as a component in the universal wave function. The equation describes how all these parallel realities evolve together, each following its own path through the landscape of possibility, while remaining mathematically connected to all the others. There is something profoundly calming about contemplating this mathematical unity. Despite the apparent chaos of infinite branching realities, the Wheeler-DeWitt equation reveals an underlying order, a cosmic symphony where every parallel universe plays its own unique note in perfect harmony with all the others. The mathematics suggests that even in a multiverse of infinite complexity, there are still fundamental principles that govern the dance of possibilities. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this mathematical framework is how it preserves the conservation laws that have always been central to physics: energy, momentum, and all the other fundamental quantities that must be conserved in our universe are still conserved across the entire multiverse. When a universe branches into two, the total energy doesn't double. It's divided between the parallel realities in such a way that the universal conservation laws remain intact. DeWitt also helped address one of the most challenging questions raised by the many worlds interpretation. If infinite universes are constantly branching off from our own, why don't we experience any evidence of this cosmic multiplication? His mathematical analysis showed that once universes branch apart, they become effectively isolated from each other. The quantum interference between parallel worlds becomes vanishingly small, explaining why we experience only a single, consistent reality. As we drift deeper into this mathematical contemplation, consider that the very equations describing your brain's neural activity are themselves quantum mechanical. According to the Wheeler-DeWitt framework, every thought you think, every memory you form, every moment of consciousness you experience is part of the universal wave function that describes all possible realities simultaneously. Meanwhile, across the vast mathematical landscape of the multiverse, the Wheeler-DeWitt equation continues its eternal calculation, describing the evolution of infinite parallel universes where other versions of Wheeler and DeWitt are discovering their own variations of these same mathematical truths. Some are working with slightly different equations. Others are exploring entirely different approaches to quantum gravity, and still others are living in realities where the fundamental constants of physics have taken on subtly different values. And in this realization, we begin to understand that mathematics itself might be the deepest language through which the multiverse speaks to itself, a cosmic conversation carried on through equations that describe not just what is, but everything that could possibly be. Tonight, we drift into one of the most breathtaking implications of the many worlds interpretation: the recognition that reality is constantly dividing, that every quantum measurement creates new universes, and that time itself becomes a branching river with countless tributaries flowing toward infinite possible futures. In the gentle realm of quantum mechanics, measurements happen far more frequently than we might initially imagine. Every time a photon interacts with an atom, every moment when a particle's spin is determined by its environment, every instance when quantum uncertainty resolves into a classical definiteness, rotary of these events represent moments when the universe quietly divides itself into parallel branches. Consider the delicate quantum processes occurring in your brain at this very moment: neurotransmitters crossing synaptic gaps, ions flowing through cellular membranes, the subtle quantum effects that may influence how neurons fire and connect. Each of these microscopic events involves quantum measurements that, according to the many worlds interpretation, create their own gentle bifurcations in reality. There is something almost musical about the rhythm of this cosmic branching. Scientists estimate that a typical human brain undergoes approximately 10^25 quantum interactions every second. If each interaction that involves genuine quantum uncertainty creates a branching point, then every second of your existence spawns an astronomical number of parallel universes, each containing a slightly different version of yourself, living through a marginally different experience. But the branching doesn't stop with your individual consciousness. Every star in every galaxy, every planet orbiting every sun, every quantum interaction in every corner of the cosmos is simultaneously creating its own cascade of parallel realities. The universe doesn't branch into just two alternatives with each quantum measurement. It branches into as many alternatives as quantum mechanics allows, creating a vast tree of possibility that grows exponentially more complex with each passing moment. Picture, if you will, the moment you first opened your eyes this morning. In that single instant, countless quantum interactions in your retinal cells, in the neurons of your visual cortex, in the molecular processes that converted photons into conscious perception. All of these created their own quiet divisions in reality. Some versions of you saw the morning light with slightly different clarity. Others experienced marginally different emotional responses to awakening, and still others might have awakened to find the light coming through windows that faced slightly different directions. Yet this constant multiplication of realities doesn't create chaos. It creates a magnificent tapestry of possibility where every potential story gets its chance to unfold. In some branches, you made slightly different decisions about what to have for breakfast. In others, you chose different routes to work or school. In still others, the random quantum events that influenced your mood led you to have different conversations, make different connections, and experience different moments of joy or contemplation. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing that in this vast multiplicity of branching time, every path that could be taken is taken. Every word that could be spoken is spoken somewhere. Every kindness that could be offered finds its way into reality in some universe. Every moment of beauty that could be experienced by conscious beings unfolds in its own perfect branch of the cosmic tree. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this temporal branching is how it transforms our understanding of the relationship between past, present, and future. In the many worlds interpretation, the past is not a fixed sequence of events, but a vast collection of branching points where reality divided into alternative histories. The future is not a single trajectory, but an ever-expanding fan of possibilities, each one equally real and equally deserving of existence. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of branching time, consider that the very words you're reading right now represent just one path through the quantum maze of possibility. In parallel universes, other versions of yourself are reading slightly different versions of these same ideas, thinking marginally different thoughts, and having their own unique moments of wonder and recognition about the nature of time and reality. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, time itself flows like an infinite river system with countless tributaries and branches carrying different versions of history toward different versions of tomorrow. Some branches flow toward futures where humanity discovers faster than light travel, others toward realities where we learn to communicate with quantum consciousness itself, and still others toward timelines where the very nature of time reveals secrets we haven't yet learned to imagine. And in this magnificent dance of branching possibilities, we begin to glimpse a profound truth. Every moment you live is not just a single point in time, but a garden where infinite alternative moments bloom simultaneously, each one real, each one precious, each one a unique note in the eternal symphony of what it means to exist in a universe where every possibility finds its way into reality. In the quiet depths of contemplating infinite realities, we encounter one of the most intriguing puzzles of the many worlds interpretation. If we are constantly multiplying into countless versions of ourselves, if every quantum measurement splits the universe into parallel branches, why do we experience only a single, continuous stream of consciousness? Why don't we feel ourselves dividing or sense the presence of our parallel selves, living out alternative stories just beyond the veil of perception? The answer lies in understanding the exquisite mechanics of how quantum multiplication actually works. When the universe branches at a quantum measurement, it's not as though one version of you suddenly becomes aware of multiple realities simultaneously. Instead, the branching creates completely separate, independent streams of consciousness, each one convinced that it represents the single, unique thread of your existence. Picture, if you will, a cosmic library where every book that could ever be written is being authored simultaneously. When you read a particular sentence in your book, you don't suddenly become aware of all the alternative sentences being written in parallel volumes. Each version of you, in each branch of reality, experiences their own complete, self-consistent story, unaware that countless other versions are writing their own equally valid chapters in the vast encyclopedia of possibility. There is something almost musical about the mathematics that governs this multiplication. Each branch of reality becomes what physicists call decoherent from all the others, meaning that quantum interference between parallel worlds becomes vanishingly small. The versions of you living in different branches cannot exchange information, cannot influence each other's experiences, and cannot even detect each other's existence, despite being fundamentally connected through the universal wave function. This decoherence happens incredibly quickly, typically within tiny fractions of a second. Once a quantum measurement occurs and reality branches, the different outcomes rapidly become isolated from each other through their interactions with the environment. It's as if the universe has an elegant mechanism for ensuring that each branch of reality can develop its own authentic story without interference from its parallel siblings. Consider the quantum processes occurring in your brain as you contemplate these very ideas. The neural networks that process these concepts, the electrochemical signals that create your thoughts, the subtle quantum effects that may influence consciousness itself. All of these are creating their own quiet branches in the tree of reality. Yet each version of you experiences a single, unified stream of awareness, convinced that their particular sequence of thoughts represents the definitive version of this contemplation. The multiplication is so seamless, so perfectly orchestrated by the laws of quantum mechanics, that consciousness itself never experiences any discontinuity. From the inside, each branch feels like the natural, inevitable continuation of your personal history. You have no sense of having been copied or multiplied. You simply continue existing, thinking, and experiencing life as the same continuous self you've always been. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this multiplication mechanics is how it preserves the authenticity of experience across all branches. Every version of yourself that branches off from quantum measurements has equal claim to being the real you. Each one carries forward complete memories, personality, hopes, and dreams. Each one will continue to grow, learn, and evolve in their own unique direction based on the slightly different quantum outcomes that define their branch of reality. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing that this multiplication doesn't diminish you, it multiplies you. Every quantum branching creates new opportunities for versions of yourself to explore different possibilities, to make different discoveries, to experience different forms of joy and wonder. In some branches, you might have slightly different insights about these very concepts. In others, you might be exploring entirely different questions about the nature of existence. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of multiplication mechanics, consider that the very act of understanding these ideas is itself creating countless branches of reality. Some versions of you will finish reading this with a deep sense of wonder, others with productive skepticism, and still others with entirely new questions that haven't yet occurred to the version of you experiencing these words right now. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, the mechanics of multiplication continue their eternal dance, creating new realities with such elegance and precision that each conscious being experiences their existence as singular and unique, never suspecting that they are part of an infinite chorus of consciousness exploring every possible variation of what it means to be aware, to wonder, and to seek understanding of the magnificent cosmos that gave rise to the capacity for consciousness to contemplate its own infinite nature. And in this realization, we begin to appreciate that the mechanics of multiplication are not just physical processes, but the universe's way of ensuring that every possible story of consciousness gets told, every potential moment of awareness gets experienced, and every version of wonder that could emerge from thinking beings finds its perfect expression in the boundless garden of parallel realities. Tonight, we turn our contemplative gaze inward, exploring perhaps the most intimate implication of the many worlds interpretation, the recognition that you, as a conscious being, are constantly branching into countless parallel versions of yourself through the quantum processes occurring within the delicate architecture of your own mind, within the 3 pounds of neural tissue that rest quietly inside your skull. Approximately 86 billion neurons are engaged in an intricate dance of electrochemical communication. Each neuron connects to thousands of others through synapses, tiny gaps where chemical messengers called neurotransmitters carry signals from one cell to another. What makes this process particularly fascinating from a quantum perspective is that these synaptic transmissions involve individual molecules, and the behavior of individual molecules is governed by quantum mechanical principles. Consider the moment when a single neurotransmitter molecule is released from one neuron and travels across a synaptic gap to bind with a receptor on another neuron. The precise timing of this release, the exact trajectory the molecule follows, and whether it successfully binds to its target receptor can all be influenced by quantum uncertainty. These microscopic quantum events, occurring millions of times per second throughout your brain, may create tiny branching points where slightly different versions of neural activity unfold in parallel universes. There is something almost musical about contemplating how these quantum variations might influence consciousness itself. A neurotransmitter molecule that binds successfully in one universe might miss its target in another, leading to subtly different patterns of neural firing. These microscopic differences could cascade through neural networks, potentially influencing everything from the exact words that come to mind when you're trying to express an idea, to the precise emotional coloring of a memory, to the specific insights that emerge during moments of creative thinking. Picture, if you will, the moment when you're searching for a particular word during a conversation. In this universe, specific quantum events in your brain's language centers help you retrieve exactly the right term. But in parallel branches of reality, slightly different quantum outcomes might lead other versions of you to choose different words, express slightly different ideas, or even pause to think for marginally longer before speaking. Each version experiences their choice as natural and inevitable, unaware that countless alternatives are being explored simultaneously. The implications become even more intriguing when we consider the role that quantum effects might play in decision-making processes. Some neuroscientists speculate that quantum indeterminacy could provide the physical basis for free will, creating genuine unpredictability in neural processes. If this is true, then every decision you make, from the trivial choice of which route to take to work to profound, life-changing commitments, might represent a quantum branching point where different versions of you explore different possibilities. Yet this is only the beginning of the mystery. Recent research suggests that quantum effects might operate not just at individual synapses, but within the microtubules that form the structural skeleton of neurons themselves. These tiny protein structures exist at the boundary between classical and quantum physics, potentially maintaining quantum coherence for longer periods than previously thought possible in the warm, chaotic environment of living cells. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing that these quantum processes don't make you less yourself. They make you more yourself in infinite variations. Each version of you that branches off through quantum neural events carries forward your complete personality, memories, and essential characteristics. The differences between parallel versions might be so subtle as to be nearly imperceptible. A slightly different mood, a marginally different perspective on a problem, a barely detectable shift in the timing of your thoughts. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this quantum multiplication is how it ensures that every potential version of your consciousness gets its opportunity to exist and experience life. Some versions of you might have slightly better intuitive insights about certain problems. Others might be marginally more creative in specific moments. Still others might experience subtly different emotional responses to the same events, leading to their own unique variations of joy, wonder, and understanding. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of your quantum nature, consider that the very thoughts you're having about these concepts are themselves influenced by quantum processes in your brain. The specific insights that emerge, the particular connections your mind makes between ideas, and the unique way you're processing and understanding these concepts, all of these may be creating their own gentle branches in the tree of reality. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, countless quantum versions of yourself are exploring their own variations of consciousness. Some are having slightly different thoughts about the same ideas. Others are discovering entirely different aspects of the many worlds interpretation, and still others are living through realities where the fundamental nature of consciousness itself has revealed different secrets about the relationship between mind and quantum reality. And in this recognition, we begin to appreciate that you're not just a single point of consciousness experiencing one particular life, but rather an entire constellation of awareness spread across infinite parallel realities, each version authentic and complete, each one a unique exploration of what it means to be conscious in a universe where every possibility of awareness finds its way into existence through the gentle, persistent dance of quantum mechanics operating within the magnificent complexity of thinking minds. In the gentle twilight of philosophical contemplation, we encounter one of the most profound mysteries raised by the many worlds interpretation. If every quantum measurement creates parallel branches of reality, and if consciousness itself emerges from quantum processes in the brain, then what happens to the unified experience of being you when the universe divides? Do you somehow split into multiple conscious streams? Or does consciousness remain mysteriously singular even as reality multiplies around it? This question touches the very heart of what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, the mystery of how subjective first-person experience emerges from physical processes in the context of many worlds, quantum mechanics. This puzzle becomes even more intricate and beautiful. If your brain is constantly undergoing quantum measurements that create parallel realities, why don't you experience multiple streams of consciousness simultaneously? Consider the moment you make a decision, perhaps choosing between two responses in a conversation. According to the many worlds interpretation, quantum processes in your brain might create branches where you make slightly different choices, but from your subjective perspective, you experience only a single, unified decision-making process. You don't feel yourself splitting into multiple conscious entities. Instead, you experience one continuous stream of awareness that flows naturally from one moment to the next. There is something almost musical about the various theories that attempt to resolve this paradox. One possibility is that consciousness itself doesn't split, but rather follows one particular branch of reality, while other, unconscious versions of your brain states develop in parallel universes. This would mean that your subjective experience represents just one thread in the vast tapestry of parallel realities, while other versions of your physical brain carry on their own processes without generating the particular stream of awareness that you identify as you. Another intriguing possibility is that consciousness does indeed split, but each resulting stream is complete and authentic, with no awareness of its parallel siblings. When the universe branches, your consciousness branches with it, but each resulting conscious entity experiences itself as the continuation of the original singular stream. From the inside, none of the parallel conscious beings would feel diminished or incomplete. Each would experience their own reality as the natural, inevitable unfolding of their personal existence. Picture, if you will, consciousness as a river that flows through the landscape of neural activity. When quantum measurements create parallel branches of reality, perhaps the river of consciousness divides like a stream, encountering an island, flowing around both sides while maintaining its essential character in each channel. Each branch of the river continues to flow with the same clarity and authenticity as the original, unaware that it is now part of a larger watershed of parallel streams. Yet there's another possibility that emerges from the deepest contemplation of quantum consciousness. Perhaps the very notion of individual consciousness is itself an illusion created by our limited perspective. If consciousness is truly quantum mechanical in nature, then it might exist in superposition across multiple realities simultaneously, only appearing to collapse into singular experience because of the limitations of how conscious beings perceive themselves. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing that this mystery doesn't diminish the authenticity of your conscious experience. Whether consciousness splits or remains singular, whether it flows through one branch or many, the awareness you experience right now, the thoughts you're thinking, the understanding you're developing, the sense of wonder you might feel, all of these remain completely real and valid, regardless of how the deeper mechanics of consciousness operate across parallel realities. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this paradox is how it reveals the intimate connection between consciousness and the fundamental structure of reality itself. The mystery of why you experience unified consciousness despite living in a branching multiverse points toward deep truths about the nature of awareness that we're only beginning to understand. It suggests that consciousness might be as fundamental to the universe as space, time, and matter, not something that emerges from complex arrangements of particles, but rather a basic feature of reality that expresses itself through the quantum dance of possibilities. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of divided consciousness, consider that the very experience of pondering these questions might itself be creating parallel branches where different versions of you develop slightly different insights and understandings. Some versions might lean toward believing consciousness splits with reality, others toward thinking it remains mysteriously singular, and still others might develop entirely novel perspectives that haven't yet occurred to the version of you experiencing these particular thoughts. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, the paradox of consciousness continues to unfold in countless variations. In some branches, conscious beings discover definitive answers to these questions through future advances in neuroscience and quantum mechanics. In others, the mystery deepens as new discoveries reveal even more subtle complexities in the relationship between mind and reality. And in still others, entirely different forms of consciousness, perhaps quantum mechanical minds that naturally exist in superposition, explore aspects of awareness that biological consciousness like ours cannot even imagine. And in this recognition, we begin to appreciate that the paradox of divided consciousness is not a problem to be solved, but rather a window into the profound mystery of what it means to be aware in a universe where reality itself exists in multiple states simultaneously. Whether consciousness divides or remains unified, it continues to represent one of the most extraordinary phenomena in existence: the capacity for the universe to become aware of itself through the medium of thinking, feeling, wondering beings who can contemplate their own place in the vast cosmic dance of quantum possibilities. In the quiet contemplation of infinite realities, we encounter a landscape of possibilities that stretches from universes almost identical to our own to realms so radically different that they challenge our very conception of what reality can be. The many worlds interpretation reveals not just a simple branching of alternatives, but a vast spectrum of parallel realities, some hovering just beyond the edge of perception, others separated by such fundamental differences that they represent entirely alien forms of existence. Imagine, if you will, the parallel universes that exist closest to our own, what we might call the neighboring worlds. These are realities that branched away from ours through single quantum measurements, creating differences so subtle they might be completely imperceptible to conscious observers. In one nearby universe, a single photon in your retina took a slightly different path when you looked up at the stars last night. In another, one electron in one synapse in your brain chose a different quantum state during a moment of contemplation. These neighboring realities are so similar to ours that versions of you living there would report essentially identical experiences, make nearly the same decisions, and pursue virtually the same paths through life. But as we drift away from these immediate neighbors, the differences begin to accumulate and compound. Universes that branched away from ours hours ago might contain versions of you who chose slightly different words in a conversation, leading to marginally different responses from others, which in turn influenced subsequent interactions in ways that create small but meaningful variations in the trajectory of your day. There is something almost musical about how these differences propagate through the complex systems of human society. A single different quantum event that influenced your mood this morning might have led you to smile at a stranger in one universe while remaining neutral in another. That smile, or its absence, could influence the stranger's day in subtle ways that ripple outward through their interactions, potentially creating branching chains of causation that gradually amplify the differences between parallel realities. Worlds that diverge from ours days or weeks ago might contain more noticeable variations. Perhaps in one of them, you decided to take a different route to work, leading to a chance encounter that changed your perspective on an important issue. Or maybe a quantum event influenced your decision-making process during a significant conversation, leading to relationships that developed along slightly different paths. These realities remain recognizably similar to ours, but contain meaningful variations in the stories being lived by conscious beings. Picture, if you will, universes that separated from ours months or years in the past. In some of these more distant neighbors, you might have made different career choices, developed different relationships, or pursued different interests based on the accumulated influence of countless quantum events that shaped your decision-making processes over time. These versions of you would still be recognizably you, carrying the same fundamental personality, memories, and characteristics, but living out distinctly different variations of your life story. Yet the spectrum of parallel realities extends far beyond these relatively familiar variations. As we venture into more distant realms, we encounter universes that diverged from ours at crucial moments in history. Some might be worlds where different quantum events influence the thoughts of great leaders, scientists, or artists, leading to alternative timelines where human civilization developed along entirely different paths. There are universes where quantum uncertainties in the early universe led to slightly different distributions of matter and energy, resulting in galaxies arranged in alternative patterns, stars that formed at different times and places, and planets with different orbital configurations. Some of these distant worlds might harbor forms of life that evolved under subtly different physical conditions, leading to biological diversity that includes species and ecosystems that never emerged in our reality. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this spectrum of possibilities is recognizing that there might be optimal distances for different types of exploration. The closest neighboring worlds offer glimpses of how sensitive reality is to quantum uncertainty, showing us how the tiniest changes can preserve or alter the general flow of events. More distant worlds reveal how small differences can accumulate into significant variations, while the most remote realities demonstrate the full range of what's possible within the laws of physics. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing that this vast spectrum ensures that every possible story gets told somewhere in the multiverse. Every version of history that could unfold does unfold. Every potential development of consciousness, every possible form of beauty, every conceivable expression of complexity and wonder all find their perfect realization in the appropriate branches of the infinite tree of reality. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of neighboring and distant worlds, consider that the very act of imagining these alternatives might be creating new quantum branches where different versions of you develop different perspectives on the nature of parallel realities. Some might be more drawn to contemplating the nearest neighbors. Others might find themselves fascinated by the most distant and exotic possibilities. And still others might discover entirely new ways of thinking about the relationships between different branches of the multiverse. Meanwhile, across this vast spectrum of realities, other versions of conscious beings are conducting their own explorations of the many worlds landscape. Some are discovering methods for detecting evidence of nearby parallel universes. Others are developing theories about communication between distant branches, and still others are learning to navigate the philosophical implications of existing within an infinite multiplicity of possible worlds. And in this recognition, we begin to appreciate that the spectrum from neighboring worlds to distant realms represents not just a catalog of alternative realities, but a testament to the magnificent creativity of existence itself. A universe so generous in its possibilities that it provides not just one story, but every story that the laws of physics allow. Each one real, each one complete, each one a unique exploration of what it means to exist in a cosmos where every possibility finds its perfect expression somewhere in the boundless garden of parallel realities. In the gentle darkness of deep contemplation, we arrive at perhaps the most emotionally challenging aspect of the many worlds interpretation, confronting what it truly means to exist in a reality where every possible version of yourself, every potential outcome of every decision, every conceivable variation of every life story actually exists somewhere in the infinite expanse of parallel universes. There is something both exhilarating and overwhelming about truly grasping the implications of infinite multiplication. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, then every choice you didn't make in this reality was made by another version of you in a parallel universe. Every opportunity you missed here was seized there. Every word you left unspoken in this world was spoken in another. Every path you didn't take through life is being walked by an alternative version of yourself who exists as fully and authentically as you do. Consider the profound implications of this infinite multiplicity for concepts like regret and missed opportunities. In a universe of endless branching possibilities, is it meaningful to feel sorrow about paths not taken when every possible path is simultaneously being explored? If another version of you is living out every alternative you can imagine and countless more you cannot, then in what sense Are any possibilities truly lost? Picture, if you will, the versions of yourself who made different choices at crucial moments in your life. There are universes where you pursued different careers, developed relationships with different people, moved to different places, and discovered different passions. Some of these alternative selves might be living lives that appear more successful by conventional measures, while others might be experiencing challenges that make you grateful for your particular path through reality. But the weight of infinity extends beyond personal alternatives to encompass every conscious being who has ever existed or ever could exist. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, then every person who ever lived continues to exist in countless variations across parallel realities. Historical figures you admire are still alive in some universes, still making discoveries, still creating art, still exploring the boundaries of human potential. Loved ones you've lost in this reality continue their existence in parallel branches, living out all the additional years and experiences that death prevented them from having here. There is something almost musical about how this infinite multiplication transforms our understanding of loss and mortality. In the many worlds framework, death in one universe doesn't represent the end of a conscious being's existence, but rather the point at which their story continues exclusively in parallel branches. Every moment of consciousness that could have been experienced by someone you loved is being experienced by versions of them in alternative realities. Yet, this infinite multiplication also raises profound questions about the uniqueness and specialness of individual experience. If every possible version of every conscious being exists somewhere in the multiverse, then what makes your particular stream of awareness special or significant? Are you just one drop in an infinite ocean of parallel selves? Or does your unique perspective maintain some special meaning despite the existence of countless alternatives? Perhaps the most beautiful way to contemplate this challenge is to recognize that infinity doesn't diminish value. It multiplies it infinitely. Each version of yourself is complete, authentic, and deserving of the full depth of experience and consciousness. The existence of infinite alternatives doesn't make your particular life less meaningful. It ensures that every possible form of meaning gets explored and expressed. Consider how this perspective might transform your relationship with suffering and difficulty. The challenges you face in this reality are real and valid, but they represent only one thread in the vast tapestry of your existence. Across parallel universes, some versions of you are experiencing greater difficulties. Others are enjoying easier paths, and the totality of your existence across the multiverse encompasses every possible relationship with joy, sorrow, struggle, and triumph. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing that the weight of infinity can become a source of comfort rather than overwhelm. Every act of kindness you perform in this universe is multiplied across countless parallel realities. Every moment of love, every instance of beauty, every expression of creativity and wonder, all of these are replicated and varied infinitely throughout the multiverse, ensuring that the positive aspects of existence receive just as much multiplication as any negative ones. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of infinity's weight, consider that other versions of yourself might be having their own unique responses to these very ideas. Some might feel overwhelmed by the implications, others might find them liberating, and still others might develop entirely different emotional and philosophical responses to the recognition of infinite multiplicity. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, conscious beings in countless parallel realities are grappling with their own versions of these profound questions. Some are discovering different philosophical frameworks for understanding infinity. Others are developing new ways to find meaning within multiplicity, and still others are learning to embrace the weight of infinite existence as a source of wonder rather than burden. And in this recognition, we begin to appreciate that the weight of infinity is not a burden to be carried alone, but rather a shared condition of existence in a universe generous enough to allow every possible story to be told. Each conscious being, each moment of awareness, each unique perspective on existence contributes its own irreplaceable thread to the infinite tapestry of reality, making the weight of infinity not a source of insignificance, but rather the ultimate testament to the extraordinary richness and possibility inherent in the very nature of existence itself. In the quiet halls of modern laboratories around the world, scientists are engaged in one of the most extraordinary quests in the history of human knowledge: the search for tangible evidence that parallel universes actually exist. While the many worlds interpretation emerges naturally from the mathematics of quantum mechanics, the question remains whether we can ever hope to detect direct proof of these infinite alternative realities that theory suggests surround us like an invisible ocean of possibility. The challenge is both elegant and profound. By definition, once universes branch apart through quantum measurements, they become causally isolated from each other. The very mechanism that creates parallel worlds, quantum decoherence, also ensures that they cannot easily communicate or interfere with each other. It's as if nature has designed the most perfect cosmic hide-and-seek game, creating infinite realities while making them nearly impossible to detect from within any single branch. Yet there is something almost musical about the creative approaches scientists have developed to search for evidence of many worlds. Some of the most promising investigations center around quantum computers, devices that harness quantum superposition and entanglement to perform calculations in ways that classical computers never could. When a quantum computer operates, it seems to explore multiple solution paths simultaneously, as if it's somehow accessing computational resources that exist beyond our single universe. Consider the extraordinary behavior of quantum algorithms like Shor's algorithm, which can factor large numbers exponentially faster than any known classical method. Some physicists argue that this computational speedup can only be explained if quantum computers are somehow performing parallel calculations across multiple branches of reality. When a quantum computer factors a large number, it might be drawing on the computational power of countless parallel universes, each one exploring different aspects of the problem space. Picture, if you will, a quantum computer as a window into the multiverse, a device that allows our single branch of reality to borrow computational resources from its parallel siblings. Each quantum bit, or qubit, in the computer exists in superposition across multiple possible states, potentially representing information processing that spans numerous alternative realities. When the computation completes and the quantum system collapses to a definite answer, we might be seeing the result of a vast collaborative effort across parallel worlds. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing that these quantum computational effects provide some of the strongest indirect evidence for the many worlds interpretation. The exponential speedup achieved by quantum algorithms is difficult to explain unless quantum computers are somehow accessing exponentially more computational space than exists within our single universe. This suggests that the parallel realities predicted by many worlds theory are not merely mathematical abstractions, but actual computational environments that can influence physical processes in our branch of reality. Other scientists are exploring different approaches to detecting evidence of parallel worlds. Some are looking for subtle anomalies in the cosmic microwave background, radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang, that might reveal signatures of quantum branching, events that occurred in the early universe. Others are investigating whether certain quantum interference patterns might preserve traces of interactions with parallel branches that haven't quite decohered completely. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this search for evidence is how it pushes the boundaries of experimental physics into previously unimaginable territory. Researchers are developing tests for the relative phases of quantum wave functions, looking for correlations that might indicate the presence of unobserved branches. They're creating increasingly sophisticated quantum interference experiments that probe the boundaries between superposition and decoherence, searching for moments when parallel worlds might briefly overlap or interact. Some of the most intriguing proposals involve creating quantum systems that are isolated from their environment for extended periods, potentially allowing them to maintain superposition longer and preserve traces of alternative measurement outcomes. If successful, these experiments might reveal subtle but measurable differences between reality as described by the many worlds interpretation and alternatives that assume genuine wave function collapse. There is something almost magical about contemplating how artificial intelligence and machine learning might eventually contribute to this search. Advanced AI systems trained to recognize patterns in quantum data might detect subtle signatures of parallel world interactions that human scientists have overlooked. These systems might identify correlations and anomalies that point toward evidence of the multiverse, hidden within the vast amounts of data generated by quantum experiments. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of the evidence search, consider that the very act of looking for proof of parallel worlds might itself be creating new branches where different versions of scientists make different discoveries. Some universes might be closer to breakthrough discoveries that definitively prove many worlds theory, while others might be developing alternative interpretations that explain quantum phenomena without requiring infinite parallel realities. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, other versions of these same experiments are proceeding along slightly different paths. Some might be yielding stronger evidence for parallel worlds. Others might be revealing unexpected quantum phenomena that point toward entirely different theories. And still others might be developing technologies that eventually allow direct communication or travel between parallel branches. And in this recognition, we begin to appreciate that the search for evidence of parallel worlds represents not just a scientific investigation, but a profound exploration of the relationship between mathematics, physical reality, and the limits of what conscious beings can ever hope to understand about the true nature of existence. Whether or not we succeed in finding definitive proof of other worlds, the search itself reveals the magnificent creativity of human curiosity as it pushes against the boundaries of the possible, seeking to understand whether the universe is truly as strange and wonderful as our most beautiful theories suggest it might be. In the gentle twilight of scientific debate, the many worlds interpretation finds itself at the center of some of the most passionate discussions in modern physics. Despite its mathematical elegance and logical consistency, this revolutionary idea faces substantial criticism from physicists and philosophers who question whether infinite parallel universes represent genuine scientific progress or an elaborate retreat from the central puzzles of quantum mechanics. The most fundamental criticism centers on what philosophers of science call the principle of parsimony, often expressed through Occam's razor. The idea that simpler explanations are generally preferable to more complex ones. Critics argue that postulating infinite parallel universes to explain quantum measurements represents the ultimate violation of this principle. Why, they ask, should we accept the existence of countless unobservable realities when we could instead simply acknowledge that quantum systems sometimes behave in ways that don't conform to our classical intuitions about reality? There is something almost musical about the elegance of this criticism. From this skeptical perspective, the many worlds interpretation doesn't solve the mystery of quantum mechanics so much as hide it behind an infinitely elaborate cosmological structure. Instead of accepting that we might never fully understand why quantum measurements produce definite outcomes, the theory proposes that all possible outcomes actually occur, each in its own complete universe. This seems to multiply entities beyond necessity, creating vast cosmological complexity to avoid confronting the limits of human understanding. Another significant challenge comes from the problem of testability. Science has traditionally distinguished itself from other forms of human knowledge through its emphasis on making predictions that can be experimentally verified or falsified. But how can we test a theory that explicitly states that alternative outcomes occur in causally isolated parallel universes? If we can never observe or interact with these other worlds, then in what sense does their existence represent a scientific claim rather than a metaphysical speculation? Critics point out that the many worlds interpretation makes essentially the same predictions about observable phenomena as other interpretations of quantum mechanics. Whether we believe quantum systems collapse into definite states or branch into parallel realities, we expect to see the same statistical patterns in experimental results. This apparent lack of distinguishing predictions raises uncomfortable questions about whether many worlds theory represents genuine scientific progress or simply a change in philosophical perspective about the same underlying mathematical formalism. Picture, if you will, the challenge that this creates for scientific methodology. Throughout history, competing theories have typically been resolved through crucial experiments that clearly favor one explanation over another. But the many worlds interpretation seems to inhabit a realm where such definitive tests might be impossible in principle. This has led some critics to argue that the theory, regardless of its mathematical beauty, falls outside the proper domain of empirical science. There is something profoundly challenging about confronting these methodological concerns. Even supporters of many worlds theory acknowledge that the interpretation raises deep questions about the relationship between mathematics and physical reality. If we accept that unobservable parallel universes are real simply because they appear in our mathematical descriptions of quantum systems, then where do we draw the line between physical reality and mathematical abstraction? The criticism becomes even more pointed when we consider the extraordinary ontological claims that many worlds theory makes about the nature of existence. The interpretation doesn't just postulate a few additional particles or forces. It claims that reality contains infinite copies of every conscious being, infinite variations of every possible event, and infinite alternative versions of the entire history of the universe. Critics argue that such extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which the theory has yet to provide. Some physicists have proposed alternative interpretations that preserve the mathematical elegance of quantum mechanics without requiring infinite parallel realities. The pilot wave theory, for example, suggests that quantum systems have definite properties at all times, guided by a quantum field that produces the same statistical predictions as standard quantum mechanics. Other approaches focus on the role of information and measurement in quantum systems, seeking to understand wave function collapse as an emergent phenomenon rather than a fundamental feature of reality. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of these criticisms is how they reflect the healthy skepticism that drives scientific progress. The scientists who question many worlds theory aren't necessarily opposed to revolutionary ideas. They're insisting on the rigorous standards of evidence and logical consistency that have made science such a powerful method for understanding the natural world. Yet supporters of many worlds theory respond with their own compelling arguments. They point out that the interpretation emerges naturally from taking quantum mechanics seriously without adding any additional assumptions about wave function collapse or hidden variables. They argue that while parallel universes may be unobservable individually, their collective effects might be detectable through phenomena like quantum computation, which seems to harness exponentially more computational resources than any single classical universe could contain. There is something almost calming about recognizing that this ongoing debate represents science at its best, brilliant minds engaging with profound questions about the nature of reality, pushing each other toward deeper understanding through rigorous criticism and creative response. Whether many worlds theory ultimately proves correct, its critics have forced its supporters to refine their arguments and explore new ways of connecting mathematical formalism with physical reality. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of scientific controversy, consider that this very debate might be occurring in countless variations across parallel universes. Some branches might be closer to resolving these questions definitively. Others might be developing entirely different approaches to understanding quantum mechanics, and still others might be discovering new phenomena that transform the entire landscape of the debate. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of scientific inquiry, the tension between mathematical elegance and empirical testability continues to drive progress in our understanding of quantum reality, whether through new experiments, novel theoretical insights, or unexpected technological applications. The ongoing dialogue between supporters and critics of many worlds theory ensures that our exploration of quantum mechanics continues to deepen and evolve. And in this recognition, we begin to appreciate that the criticisms and controversies surrounding many worlds theory are not obstacles to understanding, but rather essential components of the scientific process itself, the very mechanism through which human knowledge refines itself, tests its limits, and gradually approaches deeper truths about the magnificent and mysterious universe that gave rise to conscious beings capable of contemplating their own existence within the vast cosmic dance of possibility and reality. Tonight, we turn our contemplative gaze toward perhaps the most personally transformative aspect of the many worlds interpretation, how the possibility of infinite parallel selves fundamentally changes our understanding of choice, responsibility, meaning, and what it truly means to live a human life in a universe where every possible story gets told. In the gentle realm of traditional thinking about human existence, we typically understand our lives as singular narratives, unique stories that unfold through time based on the choices we make and the circumstances we encounter. We celebrate achievements because they represent paths we successfully navigated, and we feel regret about mistakes because they represent opportunities we failed to seize. Our sense of personal identity is deeply intertwined with a particular sequence of experiences and decisions that have shaped who we've become. But the many worlds interpretation invites us to radically reimagine this conception of selfhood and existence. If every possible choice we could make is actually made by some version of ourselves in parallel universes, then what does it mean to take responsibility for the particular path we've followed through life? Are we truly the authors of our destiny, or are we simply conscious observers of one particular thread in an infinite tapestry of alternative selves? Consider the profound implications this might have for how we understand moral responsibility in a universe where every possible action is taken by some version of ourselves. Do our individual choices carry the same ethical weight if another version of you is simultaneously making the opposite choice in a parallel reality? Does this diminish the significance of the choice you make in this universe? Or does it actually amplify moral responsibility by recognizing that conscious beings across all realities are collectively exploring every possible relationship with questions of right and wrong? There is something almost musical about how many worlds theory might transform our relationship with regret and missed opportunities. Traditional thinking often carries a melancholy undertone, a sense that paths not taken are lost forever, that opportunities missed vanish into the realm of what might have been. But if alternative versions of ourselves are actually living out every possibility we can imagine, then perhaps regret becomes less about loss and more about appreciation for the vast richness of experiences being explored across parallel realities. Picture, if you will, how this perspective might change your relationship with difficult decisions. Instead of agonizing over which choice to make, because you can only make one, you might find comfort in knowing that every significant option is being explored by some version of yourself. This doesn't eliminate the importance of making thoughtful choices, but it might reduce the anxiety that comes from trying to identify the single correct path through life's complexities. Yet the many worlds interpretation also raises challenging questions about personal achievement and growth. If infinite versions of yourself exist across parallel realities, some more successful and others less so, by any measure you might choose, then what makes your particular journey through life special or meaningful? Are you just one instance among countless others, or does your unique perspective and experience maintain some irreplaceable value despite the existence of infinite alternatives? Perhaps the most beautiful way to contemplate these questions is to recognize that infinity doesn't diminish meaning. It multiplies it across all possible forms. Every act of kindness you perform is performed by you authentically in this reality, regardless of what parallel selves might be doing elsewhere. Every moment of love, creativity, or wonder you experience belongs fully to your stream of consciousness, contributing its own unique note to the vast symphony of experiences being explored across the multiverse. There is something profoundly calming about recognizing how many worlds theory might transform our understanding of suffering and loss. The pain you experience in difficult moments remains real and valid, but it exists alongside infinite variations where parallel versions of yourself experience different outcomes. Some face greater challenges, others enjoy easier paths, but the totality of your existence across all realities encompasses every possible relationship with both joy and sorrow. This perspective might also change how we think about death and mortality. In the many worlds framework, death in one universe doesn't represent the complete end of a conscious being's existence, but rather the point at which their story continues exclusively in parallel branches. Every moment of consciousness that could be experienced continues to be experienced by versions of ourselves in alternative realities where different quantum events led to different outcomes. Consider how this might influence the choices you make about how to live. If every possible version of your life is being explored somewhere in the multiverse, does this encourage a kind of cosmic fatalism, or does it inspire greater appreciation for the particular story you get to tell through your choices and experiences in this reality? Perhaps it suggests that the most meaningful response is to live authentically and fully, making choices that reflect your deepest values, while recognizing that you're contributing one voice to an infinite chorus of consciousness. As we drift deeper into this contemplation of human implications, consider that other versions of yourself might be having entirely different responses to these same questions. Some might find the many worlds perspective liberating. Others might feel it diminishes personal responsibility, and still others might develop completely novel approaches to finding meaning within infinite multiplicity. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of the multiverse, conscious beings in countless parallel realities are exploring every possible way of understanding existence, purpose, and meaning. Some are developing philosophical frameworks we haven't yet imagined. Others are discovering different relationships between individual identity and cosmic multiplicity. And still others are learning to live with profound joy and purpose despite, or perhaps because of, their awareness of infinite alternative selves. And in this recognition, we begin to appreciate that the implications of many worlds theory for human existence are not prescriptive but illuminating. They don't tell us how we must live, but rather reveal the magnificent context within which we get to make our choices about how to live. Whether we find meaning through embracing our uniqueness within infinity, through contributing to the collective exploration of possibility across parallel realities, or through some entirely different approach we haven't yet discovered, we remain conscious beings capable of love, growth, wonder, and the creation of authentic meaning in our particular corner of the vast cosmic dance of existence. As our gentle exploration draws toward its close, we find ourselves standing at the edge of perhaps the most profound contemplation of all, our place as conscious beings within a cosmos that may contain not just one story, but every story that could ever be told, not just one reality, but every reality that the laws of physics allow to exist in their infinite creativity and abundance. There is something deeply moving about imagining the vast, silent symphony that surrounds us if the many worlds interpretation is correct. Across the boundless expanse of parallel realities, every possible variation of cosmic history plays out simultaneously. Galaxies forming in slightly different configurations, stars being born and dying in alternative sequences, planets evolving along countless different trajectories of possibility. Each universe contributes its own unique melody to a cosmic composition so vast and complex that no single conscious being could ever hope to hear more than one small fragment of its infinite beauty. In this magnificent multiplicity, every version of yourself that could exist does exist, each one experiencing their own authentic journey through the landscape of consciousness and choice. Some are reading these very words in realities where the language is slightly different, the concepts explained with marginally different metaphors, or the insights arriving through subtly alternative paths of understanding. Others are exploring entirely different questions about the nature of existence, driven by the particular combination of curiosity and circumstance that shaped their unique branch of reality. Consider the profound beauty of recognizing that if many worlds theory is correct, then every act of love that could ever be expressed is being expressed somewhere in the multiverse. Every moment of wonder that could ever dawn in a conscious mind is dawning in some reality. Every possible form of beauty that could ever emerge from the complex dance of matter and energy is finding its perfect expression in its own universe, contributing to the endless creativity of existence itself. Picture, if you will, all the versions of human civilization that might be unfolding across parallel realities. Some have developed technologies that allow them to detect and perhaps even communicate with other branches of the multiverse. Others have focused their attention on entirely different aspects of existence, perhaps developing forms of art, philosophy, or spiritual understanding that we haven't yet imagined. Still, others might be taking their first tentative steps toward recognizing that they exist within a vast multiplicity of alternative realities. Yet, there is also something beautifully melancholic about this vision of infinite multiplicity. If every possible story gets told somewhere in the multiverse, then every possible tragedy unfolds alongside every possible triumph. Every loss that could be experienced is experienced. Every form of suffering that could emerge from the complex conditions of conscious existence finds its expression in some branch of reality. The symphony of universes contains every possible note, from the most joyful to the most sorrowful. But perhaps this is precisely what makes the symphony so magnificent, not despite its inclusion of every possible form of experience, but because of it. In a cosmos where every story gets told, the full range of what it means to be conscious gets explored. The capacity for joy becomes meaningful, partly because the capacity for sorrow also exists. The possibility of love gains depth from the recognition that loss is also part of the vast space of possibilities that consciousness can explore. There is something profoundly comforting about recognizing your place within this infinite symphony. You are not just a single note played once and then forgotten, but rather a continuous melody that weaves through the cosmic composition in countless variations. Every version of yourself contributes something irreplaceable to the total symphony, a unique perspective, a particular combination of experiences and insights, a specific way of being conscious that has never existed before and will never exist again in exactly the same form. As we drift toward the natural conclusion of our contemplation, consider that the very capacity you have to wonder about these questions, to contemplate the possibility of parallel selves, to feel awe at the potential vastness of reality, to find meaning and beauty in the exploration of existence itself, represents one of the most extraordinary phenomena in the cosmos. Consciousness that can contemplate its own nature and place within reality is not just another physical process, but the universe's way of becoming aware of itself, of experiencing wonder at its own magnificent complexity. In some parallel realities, versions of yourself are concluding their own contemplations of these ideas with different insights, different emotional responses, and different questions for future exploration. Some might feel overwhelmed by the vastness of infinite multiplicity. Others might find it the most comforting truth they've ever encountered. And still others might be inspired to entirely new ways of living in light of their awareness of parallel selves. Meanwhile, across the vast symphony of universes, other forms of consciousness might be discovering their own relationships with the many worlds interpretation. Some might naturally exist in quantum superposition, experiencing multiple realities simultaneously in ways we cannot imagine. Others might have developed beyond our current understanding of what consciousness can become, exploring aspects of awareness that biological minds like ours are not yet capable of comprehending. And so, we arrive at perhaps the most beautiful recognition of all. Whether or not the many worlds interpretation is ultimately correct, the very fact that conscious beings can contemplate such possibilities reveals something profound about the nature of existence itself. We live in a universe, or multiverse, so rich in possibility that it has given rise to minds capable of imagining infinite alternatives to their own reality, capable of finding meaning and beauty in the contemplation of vast cosmic multiplicity, capable of feeling connection to versions of themselves they will never meet in realities they will never directly experience. In this quiet moment of reflection, as you consider your place in the potential vastness of parallel realities, remember that regardless of how many versions of yourself might exist across alternative universes, this particular stream of consciousness, these specific thoughts, this unique perspective, this irreplaceable moment of awareness belongs entirely to you. You are simultaneously one voice in an infinite chorus and an utterly unique expression of what it means to be conscious in a cosmos generous enough to explore every possible variation of the magnificent phenomenon we call existence. The silent symphony plays on in realities we can only imagine, and in this reality we know, each universe contributing its own perfect note to the endless exploration of what it means to be, to think, to wonder, and to find beauty in the contemplation of our place within the vast, mysterious, and infinitely creative cosmos that gave rise to the capacity for conscious beings to dream of parallel worlds and find, in that dreaming, a deeper appreciation for the extraordinary gift of awareness itself.